With all the litigation and legislation that's going on, we can't let the cultural parts fall through the crack. We just saw a big victory in the city of Reading with a mayoral proclamation. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. With litigation continuing to move its way through the courts, the legislature about to close up shop for the year, I wanted to focus today on the cultural aspect of the Second Amendment. With that comes a lot of local advocacy, and we've got a great one for you today. Before introductions, Jacob, go ahead and roll this clip.
New this morning, the mayor of Reading issued a proclamation at last night's meeting detailing the city's support for the Second Amendment and the right to own guns. Mayor Tenessa Audette made that announcement at the beginning of last night's council meeting. That proclamation says the California legislature continues to pass unconstitutional laws which infringe on the Second Amendment, and the mayor will not support any order that violates the Constitution.
It is in support of the Second Amendment, which we are all in support of. This is a proclamation to say these are the values of our city. This is what we are going to stand on, which is the Constitution and precedent from Supreme Court decisions, as well as our response, our values, and what we can do as a city council in response to what Sacramento does.
Audette said a copy of that proclamation will be available for you to review at Reading City Hall.
So, of course, that was the city of Reading with the mayoral proclamation given by Mayor of Reading, Tenessa Audette, who is our guest today. Tenessa, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about the culture that you have there in the city of Reading, and tell us how you find yourself as the mayor.
Well, yes. So I have been in California my whole life. Have lived just about everywhere in California. Traveled, and I went to college up at Sonoma State. I did volleyball. I played junior college volleyball down in San Diego. So I've kind of been up and down from north and south. And I'll tell you that the culture of Reading is it's diverse in that we have a lot of different ways we think we can get the same thing done. But I have knocked on doors. I've been running campaigns for 9 years in California, and in Reading alone, I've knocked on over 20,000 doors. And one thing that is very consistent is that you will not mess with our Second Amendment rights. And so it doesn't matter if you are far left or far right. I have seen far left stickers that we would all identify with far left right next to a protect my Second Amendment sticker. So I think the culture there is that we respect our Constitution, we respect our rights, but we also need to know that that needs advocacy. You don't get to have a republic and have a constitutional republic if you're not willing to fight for that right. So I ran for office 2 years ago for city council, and my peers have voted me to be the mayor for this year. And I've taken it very seriously that having worked in the legislature for the last 5 years as a district rep, I know how valuable local voices are. And there is no way to make things better sometimes, but there is definitely a way that locals can make it worse. And so it's important that we set our boundaries of what we're willing to take and what our people that have voted for us, who we are representing, are willing to take. And so I find myself in this position with that mayor's proclamation because I think that as voices that care, we have to start being very vocal about what we stand for and push back wherever we can to the state to reassess, to reframe, and to encourage others to do the same.
So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, we have discussed on this channel before Second Amendment resolutions. This proclamation was seemingly written like a Second Amendment resolution, but can you tell us what exactly a mayoral proclamation is and what it does for the city?
So basically, it's the mayor saying, this is a priority, this is important. I'm going to speak as a voice for the city to say, this is what we stand for, this is what we value, and this is why. And so that's what it was. I would have loved for it to be a resolution. But as you know, sometimes people don't have the political will to do things, and they for whatever reason, call it politics when they're uncomfortable with it. So all the things that we don't like, we call it politics, but it's all politics, and politics is a Greek word. It means the affairs of a city. And so really it's who's making the decisions, who's talking about what in the public square. And so if you want to stand up and say something matters to you, whether you are we the people or you are an elected at whatever level, really what you're doing is you're representing your values and you're representing what matters the most. And there's setting priorities is our responsibility. And so that's what the mayor's proclamation was. It was setting a priority that this is what matters most.
So you've got the culture seemingly existing, which I think is great to have a diverse culture where everybody respects the Second Amendment. That's certainly what we stand for. It doesn't necessarily get represented only, but it's not representing only one side. It is for everybody, as is everything in the Constitution. But when it comes to this mayoral proclamation, I'm sort of curious why the Second Amendment and why now?
Okay, so I've 9 years on campaign work talking to everyday people in a thousand on all different types of races. So I've really had quite a diverse bit of understanding of what the public is asking for us to do and what to protect. Then I have worked in the legislature for 5 years. And one of the things that I do as a district rep is I do constituent services, and the DOJ is my assignment. And so I have worked for, especially in the last few years, trying to help citizens deal with the bureaucracy of the DOJ that is denying your rights by delaying your rights. And they do it time and time again. And so we've been advocating for that. So I know it's a big deal. I know that they have ramped up all the flags into the system to make you, do a live scan when you purchase something, do a live scan when you pick it up, and it's expensive, it's burdensome. There are no other rights that anybody's talking about that cost this much to actually exercise your right. They make roadblock after roadblock. So I know the importance of it. And as I stepped into this new adventure of running for state office and running for assembly, I'm painfully aware of how difficult the state is making it to just own a firearm and get ammunition and to be able to afford it. It's being something that you could barely afford anymore. And just the red tape and the frustration that it causes. So when I became a city council member and I became elected, there's very few tools in your tool belt that you can use. But one of the things that you can do when you are in local government is if a state has a law, we locally can make that worse for people. So if the state says, it takes this many days to get a firearm, or you have, this hurdle you have to overcome, we can say, oh, and we're going to penalize you more. And I'm sure plenty of different lawsuits where it's like, okay, so the state says this, but we're going to make it worse. What we can very rarely do is make it better, right? So we can't say, no, you don't have to follow that law. Right? We can try that. It never works. They just pass more laws because it's a super majority. I mean, they're going to really push on this. But what we absolutely can do and need to do is every time they have a new idea for a bill, every time that there's something coming through the legislature that is absolutely going to take away our rights or limit our rights, we have to push back with these letters, with proclamations, with resolutions, because what that says is our people, our 40,000, 90,000, 100,000 constituents do not want you to do that. And when we push back at our levels, at the county levels and at the city levels, and to say, hey, we're representing this many people and we don't like what you're doing, we want to say, stop doing that. That's what proclamations and resolutions are for. They're boundary setting because they do count how many cities and counties are pushing back. They do pay attention to that. And it's really just boundary setting. And so I encourage all mayors. If your council won't do it, then you can do it as the mayor. If your mayor won't do it as a council. But do something. Speak up and say something, because that's your job. It's to represent people. And my people are all saying, protect this. And so whatever it takes, you have to do the things that you are equipped to do to actually take a stand. And that's what we did.
Well, it's certainly good to have and refreshing to have an elected official so in tune with their constituents. It certainly is a form of advocacy to represent your people that way. I'm sort of curious what your thoughts are also with the elections coming up in a few months. Do you find this perhaps also being something to prioritize the Second Amendment for people when they go to the ballot box this year?
I feel like I hear it every year. I have never not had a campaign where people talk about the Second Amendment here in the North State. Because it's not just a right. It's actually a lifestyle. It's culture. It's what you were talking about. This is just, it's kind of second nature that we have this right and that we actually exercise it. If you're down in Southern California, you're talking about defending yourself against somebody coming into your home. It's like a life or death situation. Up here, it's for enjoyment. It's what we do as a culture. We go hunting. I mean, it is just so ingrained in every part of it. Self-defense and that type of stuff is part of that, but it's not like what they're maybe focusing on. And so it's like has an emotional response of danger. For us, it's like, no, we're not afraid of this. This is not something that we fear, or it's only in an emergency situation. It's our lifestyle, it's culture. And so it's important that up here that we communicate all the sides of this issue, and that we humanize all the sides of this issue, that we talk about the fact that, you want us to be hunting. You want these predator animals to be controlled by hunting. Like, I don't think that people in the south part of the state just understand the value. So it's up to us to communicate that value. And when you can make a resolution and just state again the value, it's so important. So all of these elections are important. All of this stuff is sometimes taken for granted. But I can tell you, I have never not had that conversation. People ask me that all the time. If you look at electeds up and down the North State, they will all put Second Amendment on their literature because it's just part of the culture.
Well, it's certainly with this proclamation serving as an example for the kinds of things we want to see in the state. Tenessa, I want to thank you for representing your constituents the way that you are, and I want to thank you for being an example. And thank you very much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing? Just because I like to look at all
Sure.
sides of things. One of the pushbacks, because I think this is important, one of the pushbacks that we got was, we already have the Second Amendment. Why do you need to do this? And I will tell you, there is no right. There certainly isn't any First Amendment right that has legislation especially for California, coming out year after year to limit that right of yours. So 3 years ago, there were 12 bills. Last year, 15 bills. This one before, 25 bills. So we're doubling year upon year of all the limitations that they're creating. They can call it gun control, but what it is control. And so if you want to push back in a representative government, your locals are one of the ways that you push back and let your voice be heard. So don't be afraid. Just stand for what you believe in. It's why people get into politics. It's why people run. They run to represent somebody. So I would say represent the rights of everybody and stand up and say something.
I could not agree more, and thank you again for all that you're doing for the citizens of California and your area there in Redding. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Have a great day. Keep up the fight.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content like this and you want to continue to see how we are doing in California with litigation, legislation, and the cultural battles, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Hit that little notification bell so that when we get these videos out on the platform, they go directly to you. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.